fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. Today, I'm here with Pete and Fisher. What's up, gentlemen?
Hey, guys.
Stuff.
So much stuff is happening. Before we dive into today's conversation, I wanted to just take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the fact that the three of us are going to be in Las Vegas, March 24th, 25th, for our Unicorn Society retreat. And as of the launch of this episode of this podcast, we have some spots that we're signing. I think 5 spots are going to be open for people to join us. And at the time of this podcast getting released, you, dear listeners, can join us at our Unicorn Society retreat, even if you're not a Unicorn Society member, which seems like a super fun choice to make for me. So you all want to talk a little bit about, maybe Fisher or Pete, what are we planning to do in Vegas? What can people expect if they want to join us?
Yeah, I mean, well, the topic is going to be marketing. So the first day, we're going to be doing some awesome talks with a number of to-be-revealed speakers. I might even do multiple talks because we've done a lot of work really getting together our playbooks. So if you want a little sampling of a soon-to-be-launched course we'll be offering for our Unicorn Society members, it is going to make your marketing so easiest and so obvious about what to do next so that you're not doing things in the wrong order, which is my biggest pet peeve I see people do because it's the thing that I think is the biggest issue. Then, of course, we'll be doing our quarterly planning the next day where you get clear on exactly what needs to happen the next quarter. So presumably taking some of the great information you get about marketing so you know what's going to happen and when, how you're tracking it, create that weekly plan so you're ready to take action. And then potentially watching a rare appearance of a little guy known around the world as Party Mark. So Party Mark I can't guarantee yet, but I have heard tell that Party Mark may be making a rare appearance.
Yeah. Are we going to see Party Pete as well in Vegas?
Oh, I don't know. Party Pete only comes out, it seems, at weddings at my age now. And that's if you want
have to arrange for a wedding. There's a lot of weddings in Vegas, Pete.
But I'm always up to watch and be in the vicinity of Party Mark because it's a pleasure. And I'm always excited about the retreats because I end up just learning a lot. These aren't the events where I go and just like pretend I can turn it off because I'm also going to lecture at the event. These ones I go with a notebook. So it's a value add for me personally, selfishly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus it's Vegas. Expense it. Put it on your business. Your business is paying. Expense it. Let's go.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a fun time. Yeah. So if you want to join us March 24th, 25th, go to businessunicorns.com, click on the link somewhere on there or somewhere around these show notes to join us and come grab one of those 5 spots for people who are joining us that are not in Unicorn Society and come meet some of our Unicorn Society badasses. It's going to be a good time.
By the way, Keeler, I still need an update because Rosemary said I'm not allowed to use the Business for Unicorns card to book the extra hotel. She's like, you're not allowed to do that. You're going to have to ask Ben and Pete. I was like, well, looks like I'm leaving the company. Anyway, we'll talk about it later. Yeah. Sorry, listeners. A lot of drama. A lot of the tension behind the scenes. All good. We try to keep you all out of it, but we're just people, just like you, constantly feuding. Pete is a huge asshole. Seems like a nice guy. That's why we call him lots of drama, Pete. Anyway.
I was going to say, when was the last time you guys had to get me to sign off on an expense? Who asked me about hotels?
He's always
Mark's trying to get the penthouse. Someone's got to rein him in.
Listen. It's actually not that bad. I was looking at the Chelsea penthouse. It's only like $2,000 or something, which sounds like a lot, but it's like a 2-bedroom suite. I know it might have been less than that. Actually, I was like, anyway, should we talk about fitness stuff?
We probably should. Well, here's the topic I want to cover today. And this is one that's very specific to all the managers and owners out there who are working right now on how to improve training their team, specifically training your trainers. One of the most common challenges I see business owners run into is that they do a good job of creating standards for their trainers when it comes to some things. They're really good at teaching their trainers what the training looks like, how to start on time, how to maybe use your clients' names on a regular basis. But one of the things that I see a lot of business owners struggle with is really identifying and training people on having the right energy as a trainer. Right? It seems like this kind of squishy, amorphous thing that I want trainers to show up with a great attitude and a great energy. And I don't know how to teach them that. I don't know how to write that down in an SOP. I don't know how to hold them accountable to that. And what the conversations I hear often default to, well, I just don't think I'm ever going to get Mark to show up like that. This is not his personality. I don't know if Mark's ever going to have the kind of energy I want him to be. He's just not that kind of person. Obviously, Mark's that kind of person. So, so I want to just ask the two of you, and I have some thoughts on this one too. But how do you train for energy of trainer, attitude of trainer? How do you write it in SOPs? How do you hold them accountable to having that right vibe in a room? Pete, I'm going to go to you first. What are your thoughts here?
Let me start by saying I don't have SOPs for it, but I have thoughts.
Great.
To me, this comes down to, in my place, this is a hiring mistake more than anything. If we get to a point where we're blindsided by someone's lack of energy, it means that we weren't paying attention during the internship process, since we're hiring primarily through the internship. But if we look at this from how we manage interns, for starters, we model the behavior we want because what we tolerate is who we are. And so if we have full-time staff members who are underwhelming from an energy and kind of purpose on the training floor standpoint, then whether we're saying it out loud or not, we are messaging to interns that this is what we've deemed acceptable. So managing my peers to put out the right vibe is important. And then beyond that, just consistent meetings discussing what we're seeing on the training floor and coaching in real time outside of the earshot of clients. So we're very careful about undermining someone's credibility on the training floor by coaching them in front of clients. So we're really good about letting staff and interns do their thing so long as a client's not at risk. Somebody's not making a dangerous decision on the training floor. We're not saying like cross our fingers and hope this just works out and we'll resolve it afterwards. But assuming this is a minor thing that we can fix quietly outside of earshot, then my best piece of advice is don't wait until your next one-on-one to address underwhelming energy or poor cueing habits or strange body language on the training floor. Coach it as you see it, which is a mistake that I do make sometimes because I fall back on this mindset that, well, so-and-so is going to be in my office next Wednesday anyway for a half hour, so I'll just hit it then. And that's me sanctioning anywhere from 1 to 6+ days of mediocrity until I decide that that's the time I address this. So resolve these issues in real time within reason is what I think.
Yeah. Great tips. Let me just recap if I can. One is, look for energy in hiring. Make sure that you're, actually hiring for not just the qualifications, but the energy and attitude they bring to a room. 2 is, model it. Make sure that the people who are the role models in the space that are actually training the new trainers actually are displaying the behaviors that you're actually looking for in them. And 3 is, correct the behaviors when you see it's wrong as soon as you can and appropriately off the floor if you can.
Sure.
Yeah, great tips.
Whenever possible, call references to ask questions of this nature. Well, one, call references, which is a mistake that a lot of gym owners are making. But in those conversations, it just can't be about purely technical competence, like competency. It's got to be about how they show up and ask questions about energy and how you would kind of evaluate how they consistently show up on the training floor. Are they known for being a higher energy person? I mean, we once made a hire where we said to ourselves, he's got no certifications, he's got no exercise science information, but every single person in the gym loves his energy. Let's make him the paid liftoff guy, the guy who's going to give handoffs on the bench and scream at people when they're trying to get PRs on the deadlift platform. And I know that sounds super crazy, meatheady and nonsense, but from a culture standpoint, I was paying a culture guy and we didn't regret that hire. He was awesome. And so we prioritize positive energy.
Yeah. Well said, my friend. Yeah. Fisher, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I mean, I think the most important thing is what Pete said, which is I will just strong +1. You kind of have to get the hire right. That's really the main thing. I haven't actually seen success ever when someone had somebody that wasn't giving the right energy and they really meaningfully moved the needle. So I would double down on that. I think the one thing that we have found to be valuable in supporting that, in addition to, of course, calling references, is putting people through what's called a stress test. So if you go to markfisherhumanbeing.com, it'll take you to my YouTube page, and there's now playlists up there, or there will be by the time you're listening to this. And there are a few videos on hiring, and one of them just breaks down in detail what the stress test is. So there's more details there, but in brief, you want to put them into a stressful situation, see how they show up. And if you are running small group personal training, if you're running classes, again, I would make the point, those are very different types of services that require very different type of coaching and energy. But you have to, well, I guess you don't have to, but I would encourage you to put them in a position to do some mock class or mock session and see what it's like when they're coaching, because you're just not going to be able to learn that in the interview. The other thing that I think could be valuable here is getting really clear and codifying the physical behaviors that you want to see and what you don't want to see. And that can help some. So you can codify things that sound ridiculous, but we've had to learn to say, which is you can't sit down or lie down on the floor while you're coaching a session, right? You can get a little bit more reasonable, which is things like a lot of coaches like to have their arms crossed. And there's a lot of stuff in the research of body language that you could learn from that would allow you to further codify what the physical behaviors are, right? And these needs to be things that you can see, because the part of the challenge of this conversation, even though we all know exactly what we're talking about, it's hard to codify what we mean we're talking about a vibe. And in fact, once I did the best job I could with it, but I'm not sure still that you actually even can change this more ephemeral energy outside of obvious things like don't have your hands in your pocket, don't sit down. You know, I even went so far as to identify, okay, there's everything as far as how they're walking around the space. There is what is the volume you're speaking at. It can't be too quiet. It can't be too loud. What is the pace you're speaking at? It can't be too fast. It can't be too slow. What is the amount of coaching you're doing? If you're not doing enough, with all due respect, and there was a moment where some people lost their minds at our facility because we were all reading Gabrielle Wolf's work. And they're like, oh, if you coach them, they won't actually figure out how to do the movements. I'm going to try to be silent for an hour, which, by the way, is maybe good for exercise science, not great for customer service. So you can try to codify a lot of those things, but I keep kind of circling back to point one. Outside of being very clear of the maybe not obvious yet to your particularly younger employees, the no-nos of body language, mostly you want to find the right person.
Yeah. I don't think I have much to add. I think I do want to double down on codifying the observable behaviors, right? Because the question I ask folks when I'm talking to our Unicorn Society members is, when you look at a trainer from across the room, what are you looking for from across the room that tells you they have good energy? And it is about the body language and the tone of their voice and their eye contact that they're making and the names that they're using and the confidence of the cues that they're giving, right? Like, we can pretty much make a list of the things we want to see when we're looking across the room that tell us that's a good fucking coach that's on their shit and has great energy today. And I think having that list when you're hiring, having that list when you're training, having that list when you're doing performance reviews, having that list to give to clients via surveys. Does your trainer do these things, right? All of that helps keep pointing people in the right direction. This is what we're looking for. This is what we're looking for. And I think I mostly agree that if you really get it wrong, you hire someone who's just really never going to reach that mark, there's very little things you can do as a business owner to help get them there. The best coaches in the world can't really change someone into something to that degree. Or maybe if you could, it's maybe just not worth it. Right. Even if it's possible, it's just not worth your time and energy to do it. And so getting someone hired who's at least close enough to the goal to start with, I think is possible. So let me ask you this, and this is kind of related, but maybe the next level of this is, how do you know when you made a wrong hire? How do you know when it's time to give up? How do you know when it's not worth it to kind of keep coaching them to get them where you want them to be? And I know this is a line that changes. It's very much context dependent, but as a general rule of thumb, what are the kinds of cues that you all look for in your own work that tells you, I think I've done as much as we're going to do. This person's just not going to reach the standard I've set. Anyone got any thoughts there?
Yeah, I wish I don't have necessarily a particular system for this, other than it just does become obvious at a certain point. And it's usually, particularly a place like MFF, which is very unique, maybe not unique, but interesting. Maybe a lot of places are like this, in that the clients are both so wanting people to win and so demanding, and just comparing the hell out of every new coach against their absolute favorite coaches from day one in a way that's a little tough. So we bring somebody in the joke, not joke is we're going to lose 1% of our membership base because of this new person. So we have 700 members. 7 of you are going to terminate because you're like, this is the straw that breaks the back. I've been here for 7 years. I'm tired of these new people coming in. I miss so-and-so. I'm terminating. And to some extent, I think that breakage is probably the cost of doing business because people also need time to ramp up. But there is a certain tipping point, and I'd say it should be relatively quickly too, because again, that is a trite bit of management conventional wisdom. You probably do want to fire pretty fast. If 4 weeks in, this is not getting where you need to, because you made the point earlier, Keeler, you can't change this particular kind of thing. And here's why, because I don't think there's a good way to get somebody to behave in a manner that is outside the way they like to be in the world. If someone is deeply, particularly in our setting, we often have this issue. And Pete, I imagine this might be even tougher in your world. There, as we know, is a little bit of an inverse correlation between real rigor from technical fitness, training, program design, a real passion for the Krebs cycle versus real personability, personal warmth, making people feel safe. And ultimately, they both matter, right? Because when you're dealing with a service professional, we're asking 2 questions. We're asking, 1, do I trust your competence? Do you seem to know what you're doing based on whatever helpful or unhelpful proxies I use to decide if you're credible? And 2, do I feel safe? Do I like you? Do you like me? Do I feel like a warm safety with you, right? And if you have to choose one, it's definitely the latter, right? You can get by and you'll still get whacked. You'll still get whacked if you have a culture of nerds. You'll have some clients that will not like somebody because they're not as credible. I'm not saying that there's no floor under which you will have negative outcomes if somebody's really not doing any coaching and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. But overall, and again, everybody gets mad at this, but there's super rocket scientists that are mad about it every day. But the person that is just friendly as hell, and specifically, the specific superpower I want you to think on is how quickly do they make as wide a variety of strangers as possible feel comfortable? So think about that again. Think very carefully about what I said. You need to be able to make a very wide variety of strangers. It's not good enough if 30% of people feel comfortable with you. And you need to be able to do that quickly because you already have this, particularly when you hire a new coach to an existing facility, for them to ingratiate themselves in there. And that is a particular type of emotional intelligence. And I would presume for the people that have been thinking about this in their facilities and asking this, there's a high correlation with that skill set versus having the vibe, the energy, whatever it is that, however we want to define this. I think the other thing I'd offer very briefly, which is a thing that you can play with for information, but frankly, again, I'm not sure how much of a behavior modification tool it is filming somebody with the sound off and then letting them see what their body language is saying. Or conversely, getting an audio recording, and that's difficult to do, frankly. I don't even know how you would do that, frankly, but if you can get an audio recording of a coach doing it, a teaching class might be a little bit easier. If someone is unmiked in a large, small group setting, that's harder to do. But if you could just listen to your coaches on audio or only watch their physical language through a soundless video, I think that would give them potentially interesting information. But I'm sad to say it. I'm not being maybe very growth mindset here. I'm not saying I'm denying them any possibility of growth, but I'm still not confident that even in seeing that, they're going to be able to meaningfully change behaviors that just are so outside of how they engage with the world and with other humans. But I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think I think that it's 100% possible for people to change anything into anything they want to become, and that journey sometimes takes a long time and a lot of energy, and may not be worth it as a small business owner to take that on, right? Yes. Right. And what about you, Pete? I mean, how do you think about? I've done enough. This is just not the right fit. What is that line for you?
Well, first, let me drop my favorite Mark quote that I've done on the podcast more than once, but I love telling people when he said, I can teach any asshole how to coach a trap bar deadlift, but I can't teach an asshole how not to be an asshole. And Mark, you opened a lecture in Florida when you and I did a 2-day, just the two of us, with that. You were wearing a unicorn mask, actually over your head. And that one stuck with me forever, but that's our philosophy. I mean, we make seasonal hires here in Massachusetts pretty routinely. We're very well staffed, or I should say, we have a army of aspiring professional baseball players, some of which are MLB affiliated, is the language you'd use. Like, they get paid to play the sport for a living, but they basically live below the poverty line. And some of them are what you'd call indie ball guys, which are would love to be affiliated, but haven't quite got there, and they want to play in this like secondary level of professional baseball. All of which don't earn particularly well and would love an opportunity to create a little bit of cash on the side or get complimentary strength training in exchange for some hours worked. And we will routinely hire basically off-season contributors who have been with us forever and know our systems inside and out, and we know could be good culture adds. And it seems that every time we make those selections, we're going with the person that Mark just described, the one who knows how to bring people together, make people laugh in the gym. And this time around, we hired a guy named Morgan who's been with us since the kid was like a freshman in high school or something. And now it wouldn't be surprising to see him make it to the major leagues this year. And on the first day of his off season, John pulled him into my office and he's like, "Morgan, we want to hire you." And Morgan's like, "For what?" And he's like, "Honestly, I kind of want to pay you to walk the training floor during high school hours and make fun of high school athletes. And if you were a client here, you'd have an appreciation for the fact that that's kind of like an endearing way of communicating. You know, there's a lot of ball busting in this environment. It's a clubhouse setting." And Morgan said, "Okay, that's fine. As long as I can wear my sleeveless, like my cutoff CSP shirt, trying to be funny." And John just looked at him dead straight face and he said, "Please do." And it made me realize, like, we're just hiring culture additions. I don't need somebody who's going to challenge John's thought process on program design. The clients really don't care what modification of the squat pattern you gave them. They care about how they feel when they're here, when they're leaving, how they can talk about it when they're not here. So I'll double down on Mark's message. Whoever makes the most strangers feel welcome the fastest is going to be my employee.
Yeah.
That's the ones I want. And all the stuff can be learned. You can learn through these podcasts. You can learn through reading. You can learn in our in-services. You can learn through good conversations with the team. Now, to follow up on what you asked, Michael, I always, when I come to the conclusion that it's time, I've known for too long and I've been sitting on it for too long. Right. And it's usually when I have finally have this moment where I'm making the excuse for why they should still be here. And I'm saying like, but they're really good at this. I know I should have a while ago. And it's when I start to realize that my team is bringing it up to me, I've let it go too far. So this is a kind of a mea culpa. I mess this one up pretty consistently, Michael, once or twice a year, it seems.
Yeah.
If I may, very briefly, I want to give credit where it's due. I think that quote, Pete, is a version of a Mike Boyle quote or concept. So I just want to give attribution where it's due. I think he talked about the certified nice person. So
I've heard of him.
Sure. I have seemed to have heard of him as well. So thank you, Mike Boyle, for allowing me to use your shtick.
Thanks, Mike Boyle. I'll share two quick things. I know we have to wrap up for time, but one thing I want to say, and this is tangential to the first topic we were covering, which is I also, when we think about building a team, the analogy that we often play around with is like you're basically making a soup or a stew, right? And there's lots of different kinds of ingredients you can bring in. This is to your point, Pete, about building a culture. Right? Every hire is a culture hire. Every hire is a different ingredient you're putting in your soup. And there's lots of delicious things you can put in lots of soups and stews. And the reason I'm using the analogy is because I think sometimes gym owners get stuck in the idea that there's one ingredient that's the only right ingredient to add to their trainer soup, right? Yeah. And the reality is, I don't think there's one kind of energy that's the only right kind. I don't think it's just the extroverted, super like outgoing, high-fivey person, right? I don't think that there's just one. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation, and that all of you out there, I don't think just one list of the kind of energy, but it's a kind of vibe we're going for. You might be a little more on the introverted side, extroverted side. You might be a little bit more physical in your expression. You might be a little verbal in your expression. Like there's lots of different flavors of what makes a good trainer and good energy. So I wanted to interject that. And then on the second point, I'm going to be maybe surprisingly prescriptive about this, is that I think that when, and I'm going to use the language that you use, Fisher, because I was going to use the same thing, is that the moment that you are questioning an employee's character or competence, I would invite, and this is the ideal. I don't know that I certainly have not always done this, but this is what I think the ideal is for me, is that you should be able to create a kind of a performance improvement plan or some milestones for that person that should allow them no more than 2 or 3 months to get rid of your doubts, right? I think 2 or 3 months of a performance improvement plan of some good coaching, some good milestones, some good training, some good role playing. If they can't get rid of your doubts about their character or competence in 2 or 3 months, time to go. But so often, and I've done this myself, it goes on too long and we make excuses for them and we cover up for them, and other people on the team also do the same. And then we get used to the fact that we don't trust their character. Yeah. And I do think that, moving forward at maybe this age of my management style and leadership, and I think Mark, feel like we're both gotten here at this point, is that like, I'm not going to give people that long anymore. If I'm conscious of the fact that I'm doubting their character or competence, you got 3 months max to change my mind about that. If not,
max.
it's time
Even
to move
that's
on.
very generous. Yes.
Yeah, it's very generous, right? But that's for someone I really would believe in. I know has the potential and I want to invest in. I'll invest 2 or 3 months. After that, it's time to just move on. I know that's kind of uncharacteristically decisive for me, but that's maybe my old age speaking.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's true. And I think it's one of those things that's very difficult to get there without some experience as a leader. I don't know that many people are able to go there right away, because there's always this cliche of the super hard ass randomly firing people. And like, I don't know that person. Like I don't know that person exists. They're just constantly firing people. Are they a jerk and having their employees run away and quit on them? Okay. Yeah, that can totally happen. But in practice, even the most hard ass person, I think, is reluctant. And maybe it's not just, or maybe it's not much about their compassion for the person, but even just their own like laziness of having to replace the position. But the reality is, if you are a softie and you know that, you're going to have to learn to correct that over time, because your team is going to be resentful. It's ultimately going to hurt you, but I also have empathy for it, because it took me a while to get there, but I don't know of anyone that has ever said, I really wish I would have fired that employee later. I wish I would have held on to that employee a little bit longer before I ultimately fired them. So yes.
Yeah. All right. I know we got to end on time. We could keep going all day, but I think this was super useful. I think it was a great conversation about how to really train and wrap your arms around what makes good energy in the space, and how to know when to get off the train that's not heading in the right direction. Well, thanks for playing along, gents. I'll wrap it up by saying, listeners, if you enjoy this podcast, let us know. Leave us a 5-star review everywhere that you listen to this podcast. Email us. Let us know what you want to talk about next. And if you're listening to this before, I think, February 26th, you're still in the early bird period to save some money and come join us in Vegas. And we'll be in Vegas March 24th, 25th. So
only 5 spots. Let's go. Come drink a martini with me. Let's go.
Thanks for a great chat, Jen. See you on the next one.
Bye.
Take care, guys.